Hello and welcome to Dinis Guarda YouTube podcast series powered by citiesabc.com and openbusinesscouncil.org and in partnership with fashionabc.org. It's great once again to be here and actually highlight people that are changing the world and as well inspiring people that actually don't stop and try to take things forward. And I think in this series, one of the things that is key for me is people first. I know that there's great projects. The world is full of amazing companies and startups, but in the end of the day, it's about the people behind it. And that's what this series is all about. And I think right now that we passed the 200 interviews, I keep pushing the people that are inspiring me, that are actually bringing us as well great projects, great ideas, but as well people that show wherever they are in the world that we can actually make the world a better place. I think somehow, if you look at history, there's always this kind of ups and downs, but what makes the best moments in history is when technology, business, and ideas go together, and especially when the people try to create value. And that's where we are about. So today I welcome to our series Gregory Griffiths, that is the founder and chairman of the IDEAX Ventures, and as well a serial entrepreneur, a technology evangelist, and especially a huge advocate for the United Nations and Sustainable Development Goals, which is something that we have been talking here on this channel, but as well a global personality in the areas of innovation, blockchain, technology, and as well how can actually all these different innovations put together. So Greg is currently the chairman and founder of the IDEAX Ventures. That is a global boutique consulting firm that specializes in Web3, as well plus of Web2 as well. Of course, we cannot stop that, but as well all the areas of blockchain technology, innovation, and as well how to look at digital currencies and digital assets. He's also the founder of UCROWDME, which is UCROWDME, decentralized innovation and insights platform powered by Web3 technologies, and as well something that looks at finding new creative ideas of creating investment deals portal for companies around the world and startups. Greg has an honors bachelor in business administration and information technology from RTE Business School in the UK and strategical management and innovation specialization from Copenhagen Business School, actually a school where I taught. So it's always good to find someone that actually has been studying there. He also did an executive course in corporate strategy in UCL, and he's been held in the past various executive levels at corporation, including Speedit, Singtel, Optus, where he achieved the largest corporate contract deal size value, Elcon and Nexon Asia Pacific. Since 2004, Greg has been active technology enthusiastic, especially for blockchain technology in Web3, where actually has been act as a serial entrepreneur and as well as an advisor to big organizations, and as well as executive advisor to the likes of companies like NZT Work, the Block Space, Credit Metaverse, and Crypto Nitro. And as well, just to finalize some of the things, because we could go for long, but I want to highlight, he's been as well working with a board member of AFEN, the blockchain network, a cutting-edge NFT project dedicated to development of user-friendly blockchain solutions, which I think are more important in real estate and education, arts and entertainment, and decentralized finance, and especially the block space that is the largest Web 3.0 knowledge and talent space in the world. And as well as a special highlight, he's been serving as well as a business consultant at the private office of His Excellence Sheikh Ahmed bin Faisal Al Qasimi group of companies in Dubai, UAE. So the list continues, but I think just as the last note, Griff is as well a Forbes author and technology council member at the Forbes Technology Council, and he was awarded the Frontrunner Award within information technology at the Go Global Awards 2021. So Greg, is a pleasure to have you here, and I'm actually very excited to talk with you here.
Likewise. Well, that's certainly a very big introduction, so thank you for that, Dinis. Yeah, there's probably a few extra things which you could add to that, but I think for the purpose of the interview tonight, that's definitely encapsulated the core things that I'm passionate about and what I'm currently doing. So I'm very excited to be on your interview this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. So Greg, you are joining us from Australia, and thank you for making this your afternoon. So I think one of the things I would like to start, and I know we're going to put for people listening to us, so forgive me for my spellings and so forth, but we're going to put all this kind of bio, the links and different things here on our YouTube channel and the different places where you're listening to us worldwide, from Spotify to others. But Greg, to start, I think one of the things that astonished me, and I think probably I share that with you, is your passion for different projects and variety of different things, which are very different, which is most of the people have difficulty to find and actually keep the pace. So how did that start? So it started when you were young. How did you start this kind of journey as an entrepreneur, as an advisor, as a business person, but as well as an inspiring person?
Yeah, it's a great question, and look, I've always been an energetic and enthusiastic individual. Even at school, I was buying and selling things and wheeling and dealing, much to the dismay of my teachers and the school principal. But I've always had that inclination, and I went on to work for my father. So I'm originally from Bournemouth in the south coast of England, on the coast there. And I've worked in several roles for my father at the time in sales and operational, from the ground up, boots up, and sort of learning, the trade, so to speak. And, put in the deep end very early. So I've always been in a situation where I've had to perform to some respect or get some sort of outcome. And that was drilled into me from a very, early age. And then since then, I've had two big passions in my life. One is obviously technology. The other is finance. And, being in a small town in the south coast of England, I wanted more for my life. I wanted a bigger challenge to test myself. And so in 1999, I packed up two suitcases, no visa, and I just headed straight to New York. I wanted to see the Big Apple. I wanted to get amongst it and be part of the financial ecosystem there, which at the time was the largest in the world. And I was there for several years. I met my wife in New York, funnily enough. And then, we spent a few years there, and then we moved back to the UK. But again, I wasn't really sort of finding my, my appetite for life or my zest for life. And so we looked at moving across to Australia. And that's really where the technology part came in. That's where I really sort of sunk my teeth into technology, dealing with, all sorts of organizations, from Fortune to large enterprise to corporate, the federal government to SMEs and so forth. And my, method or my style personally has always been consultative. It's always been, addressing problems as opposed to selling. It's always been a top-down approach, working very consultatively with individuals, targeting problems that can demonstrate real value. And that's what I bring when I come and I look at the other advisory roles I have. It's very strategic advisory. The space that we work in the Web3 space, it's very fast, it's very dynamic. And this is really the fourth industrial revolution as far as I'm concerned. And so organizations, right now, they really need to be on top of their game. And I won't talk about, the Sonys and the Kodaks and those, because every innovation, speaker talks about them. But Web3 really does need to be embraced, I think. And I think, the next couple of years ahead of us, the user adoption is only going to get bigger and bigger. And so it's a real privilege to represent and to advise, 5 other companies, 5 of the startups at this point in time, as well as the Royal Office.
Oh, that's fantastic. So one of the things I want to ask you before we go to your ventures and to different things you're doing is, I think one of the things you touched was the energy and inspiration. And I think this is very important. And I cannot highlight this enough, because what I feel in my team is, I think leadership and actually entrepreneurship is a lot about energy. And as well, how we take energy to build the technology, to build the ventures, to advise and things like that. So how do you cope with that? Because I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges we are facing right now, is that the energies are particular negative. And in history, of course, these moments keep repeating themselves, especially now, day to day of any business person. There's the component of you put the energy forward and the leadership to take it forward. So I would like to touch this before we go to the other parts, because it's something that I struggle even to push to my team, this kind of how to manage the energy, but as well how to manage the productivity out of the energy. And I know this is particular different out is more about self-development is key for business, and especially for someone that does so much as you do.
Yeah, it's another great question. And I guess there's not a straightforward answer to it, in my opinion, because there are individuals that have energy which is not on the same level as others. And then there are others who become better at managing their energy, either through self-help, real life situations, professional learning, and so forth. But for me personally, I've always been a motivated person. And I think it's easier said than done when you hear of, Mark Cuban or some of these other big names, talk about just do what you love. Well, that's easier said than done. And there aren't just jobs out there where you can just do what you love. And so it's a very correct, message, but in reality, I think it's very unpractical. And, as things, especially now in this environment, things are getting more expensive, food, shopping, energy, gas. There's other macro dynamics happening, in certain parts of the world that could be, very negative. And so there's a lot to absorb. COVID has just happened, it's still happening. We're looking at another wave here in Australia. So energy's, it's a really good point you make there. How do you manage energy? I think for me personally, I don't listen to the noise. I think there's so much noise out there. It distracts you from thinking logic, and you end up listening to your friends or people that you're not really having, a sort of, a more of a theoretical conversation when it comes to, is this the best answer for my problem, or is this the best way to deal with this, as opposed to taking a step back and, thinking about it without that, that noise blocker. And so for me, I spent a lot of time, reading and researching the industry, but not necessarily from industry experts, because I think having a diverse opinion or diversity of thought actually is a really good balance for the mind. And obviously what happens in the mind is obviously a byproduct of what happens with your energy. And so for me, it's really more about just focusing on the end goal, putting aside the noise, putting in place small, achievable steps. We are running multiple companies, but at the same time, we do have, good solid processes and foundations in place for that. Does it mean we're working longer hours? Obviously, and being in Australia doesn't help because of the time difference. But, at the end of the day, needs must. And I think for an entrepreneur or for a startup, it's very different than what it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. From a macro perspective, from a technology perspective, I think, you really do need to kind of strap in a little bit harder, so to speak, and just, try and ride the wave and try and get some early wins, either with customers, clients, or partners, and, show some tangible and measurable value, at the early stage of your business.
Yeah, that's a critical element, and I think that's one of the things that I think everyone listening to us, I think from someone like you needs to listen. And I think cutting the noise and focus, but as well having the end game. I think we very easily get distracted by everything. So, Greg, let's go through your present companies and ventures. I know that you are doing a lot. So there's IDEAX, there's your different advisory roles. There's a lot of things you're doing, like I mentioned before. So could you highlight and summarize some of the things you're doing for people that don't know so much about you, and where these ventures and what you're doing with these ventures, which is fantastic. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started IDEAX Ventures only 6 months ago, give or take. It was created through a combination of a huge gap in the market that we believe is still there right now. And that gap in the market is there isn't really a platform or a dedicated channel for Web3 startups or Web3 investors. Most platforms out there today focus on very generic industries, hairdressers, sportswear, hardware, those types of things. So there's nothing wrong with that, obviously, because they're successful existing Web2 businesses. But there is a huge gap in Web3, and that's probably because the maturity of the Web3 space is still in its infancy. Even though the market is worth X, in the trillions, it's still very much in its infancy. And so we wanted to better support early stage startups and companies. And having founded UCROWDME, Global Ideas Innovation Marketplace, and going through the trials and tribulations of trying to raise funds, pre-COVID, during COVID, not being able to travel, it really sort of just highlighted the fact that IDEAX Ventures and IDEAX Labs, which is in beta at the moment, and that will be the main platform moving forwards for Web3 startups and Web3 investors, to really sort of build a platform whereby there's a much more personalized connection with the investors. Our point of difference is really around providing initial support around due diligence and verification of both parties, providing a one-on-one real-time chat and email between startups and investors, building upon the Web3 community. So there's the whole educational ecosystem part, and obviously providing value-add online educational courses through our existing clients and partners. So for us, it's more about the holistic view of what can we do that's not being done, and how can we make that experience better for startups that don't have the experience or the sales or the marketing, or they don't know all the answers. And so we're trying to build this ecosystem to try and address a lot of those problems, including how to fundraise, who you should be talking to, how your pitch deck should look like, very specific action items, as opposed to the more traditional VCs that are very one-way focused. They won't necessarily tell you their investment mandate. So we're trying to work with professional investors so that we know what their mandate is, and we match startups with investors. And so, it's really more about providing the collective ecosystem, the personalized engagement that we have with these startups. We also have 14 advisors in 12 different countries. They also provide support to the business in terms of deal flow, in terms of investors, in terms of experience, in terms of advice. And again, everyone has access to them. So we're, ultimately would like to be a decentralized startup investor deal flow platform. That's what we'd like to be.
There's a lot of questions around what is decentralized and what is decentralized, but I don't want to go too much theoretical now, and I know that we have limited time. So how do you manage, for instance, these different ventures? And you can highlight one of them or multiple. And for instance, what is the process of governance? And for people listening to us, because I think there's a lot of discussions, but the challenge is that looking at what is happening in the crypto winter, especially in 2022, where we are, and all the challenges related with a lot of issues, both from a crypto and non-crypto, but definitely the crypto industry is going through a massive challenge. And Web3 is actually going for another even bigger challenge, because in the end of the day, it's a multi-trillion dollars, much bigger than crypto. But of course, there's even a definition about what is Web3 or Web 3.0, like Tim Berners-Lee just mentioned last week. And in the end of the day, it's like in the beginning of the internet, it's okay, the technology, there's no doubt, everyone I think is okay with that. Is more how we take this and create value with that. And I think I would like to see how do you bring this with the IDEAX, with your ventures, how do you put the theory in practice? And I think for people listening to us, how we can actually look at this, because I think the challenge is always, how do I make money at the end of the day? And how do I manage my people? How do you create this balance? And I know that you have that experience and you have that inspiration, but I would like to hear from you.
Absolutely. And I think, for anyone that's looking to, not just focus on one company or multiple facets of their company, putting in place the right process, having the right team, having people that you can trust, being able to, define work or provide work, important work that can be done through third parties or, partners, and, being okay with them running things, within their skill sets and experience. And I think, now is the time more than ever that if you look at how things are done before, everything, all the I's had to be dotted, all the T's had to be crossed. There was this ridiculous process of, just creating a simple document. And I think now employees are far more skilled and aware of, the types of tools that they need to use at work. And so, empowering your employees, I think, is a big thing. Empowering, the people that you work with, consultants, advisors, developers, partners, whoever they may be, you have to have some level of trust. Otherwise, you're ending up running around in circles because you're too worried about what the outcome looks like, as opposed to getting on with it and believing that what will be presented to you will be, good enough for you to spend 30 minutes type thing to, revise it or whatever. And so empowering your employees, your consultants, your developers, your partners, I think it's a big thing. For us, we use a lot of different tools internally. I won't go through the whole list because it's a long list, but, we use multiple CRM tools, project management tools. We try and automate as much as possible when it comes to email marketing, when it comes to user engagement on the website, whether it's using chatbots. There's lots of cool Web3 tools that are available, many free and obviously many paid. But I think it just comes down to having a more strategic long-term approach of what you want to accomplish and by when and how you're going to get there, and identifying the 3 key pillars between now and then. I think that's probably, the most important thing for that. And then, in terms of, you spoke about decentral, central. So I think, my personal definition of Web3 is it's a decentralized internet at the end of the day, supported by very cool, very disruptive tools such as, AI, machine learning. Meta is obviously part of that, blockchain is part of that. And so, there's so many different use cases that can be applied to your business from one of those or all of those. And I know we've spoken about, smart cities in the metaverse. And, again, you can look at it from a commercial perspective and say, well, the metaverse is a pure sales and marketing play for companies that want to get their brands out there and to sell products or sell services or sell solutions. Well, why not? This is probably the first time in history where you can actually get a real bird's eye view into a smart city / metaverse, world or ecosystem, and you can physically explore and be a part of a very interactive, engaging experience that you couldn't before. And so if I wanted to go to Turkey or Portugal or New York City, or if I wanted to, go up the Empire State Building, I can now do that. And so it provides many positive commercial, but also I think from a mental health perspective, people can now go on a holiday in their mind, or they can travel to places that they've never been to before. And I think that's also something which is not necessarily discussed a lot with metaverse and smart cities, the mental health play, and how, you can provide greater opportunities for individuals that can't necessarily, afford to go there.
This is super important, and I like the way you touch both the ideas, as well the glossary of this world that we live in, but as well the practicality and as well the humanity. Because in the end of the day, if you don't have energy or mental health, things just drown. So I think one of the things that I see from your profile that is amazing is this relationship by bringing on board many well-known global brands that you've been talking and working with, but as well all this innovation around companies, startups, and you're as well very focused on NGOs and the innovation, technology, and education as well. United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So how can we put this together? Because I think one of the challenges, like you just mentioned, is, and I would like to see, especially in the context of what you're doing with the IDEAX Ventures and an ecosystem. So you are building a global ecosystem that is unique, both from companies' perspective, startups, and innovation, but as well from people and putting together people, coaching and advising. So How do you do this, especially because at the moment, for instance, you mentioned metaverse, and we could go right now another podcast around that. And I know that we have limited time, but that's really this. So one of the things, and I of course I talk about this on a daily basis in this podcast and with my team and the people that I speak and people like you. But the challenge we're facing is, first of all, most of people don't understand these concepts. They have a lot of myths and prejudice around these concepts. It's actually sometimes quite crazy. And every time I speak, and I think I do research on this every day, but I never say that I'm an expert myself, which I could say, but it's more in the sense that I don't have an absolute truth. But a lot of people have. And I think the biggest challenge we're facing right now is that everyone has somehow their own definition of social media, their own prejudice of social media, their own prejudice about cryptocurrencies, their own prejudice about decentralized versus centralized. Everyone has an opinion. And the challenge right now is that it's more increasingly difficult. Of course, the tools are great. For instance, I did a study and there's more accelerators than ever in history. And people forget that. For instance, if you just go back, there was a fantastic interview by Tim Ferriss. Just if you just go back 50 to 60 years ago, there was no innovation. You could only have a job in a big corporation or for the state at the moment, or then for your family business. So most of people would have. And I think the point is that if you look at the news, it seems like we are at the end of the world. So how do you go through this, especially when you talk with the startups? How do you kill these myths? And how you really push forward this innovation? Because this is the key element. And as well, how do you build this ecosystem? Because you're doing a fantastic work, special in the ecosystem. And I think this is what most of the entrepreneurs miss, even my team, is if you don't build relationships, you might be working all day and working 15 hours, but if you don't work with an ecosystem, and working virtually is even more difficult, because face-to-face, you can always understand, listen details, but face-to-face, you have different cultures, different nuances, and you are in Australia, I'm in London, or in Europe, or in Portugal, and this is all the challenge that I'm facing.
Absolutely. And I think, this is probably sort of getting to the crux of the conversation, the interview tonight, and probably the most important part. I look at tools, I look at technology as, ways to improve things, ways to enhance things. Do they need to be used all the time? No. Should they be? It depends on the business. It depends on the startup. It depends on what they're looking to achieve. Is it going to make them smarter, faster, better? I don't know until you look at the pros and cons and have a strategic idea of where you want to go and how you want to get there. Like if you look at any new technology or toy, it takes time for adoption, or it takes time for maturity. We're still in the infancy, as I mentioned earlier, in many respects with blockchain, metaverse, Web3. I do think there's going to be a significant growth, in the next 5 to 10 years. And I think that's probably because of a few things. One, because I think it'll be made more widely available and there'll be better use cases. Current use cases at the moment with blockchain are predominantly focused. Well, firstly, they're focused for, the average Joe, the common person. And so that they can make their payments, they own their data, they have transparency, they know that, their information is pretty much 99.99% secure on the blockchain. There are some instances around, hacking and other vulnerabilities, but in general, I would say it's pretty much, bulletproof. And so from a consumer's perspective, that's great. They don't have to pay, exorbitant fees from their banks to send money to their friends and family. They can send it when they want. It's their people power moment. But then you look at other parts of Web3 and centralized blockchain, which is very much driven by corporations and pretty much driven internally for them. And then you have the governments, government and regulations, God bless. They want to monetize this. They want to generate more revenue and cash flow from this huge opportunity in front of them. And so as much as people say, well, crypto and blockchain is going from decentralized to centralized, I think, to a degree it has to. I don't think the end result or the end outcome will be it is now centralized. I just think there needs to be possibly some better processes put in place to protect both the consumer and also the companies. And I say that because if you want to get true adoption, then it has to be accessible at all stages of the corporate world or of the world in general. And so if we want to start talking about going to school and paying for your lunch with your Bitcoin wallet or your Ethereum wallet, that's going to take a while. And I think because, as I mentioned earlier, the use cases aren't there just yet. The conversations from government to corporates are miles behind. They're not even remotely close. The UAE is obviously one of the most innovative and disruptive regions on the planet, as is London and maybe not Sydney, but other capital cities. And they are pushing and they are lobbying governments and they are lobbying their local council to make changes. And what's really interesting is you see a lot of brands like Puma or Adidas or Red Bull moving very aggressively into the metaverse space, which is really exciting. It's great to see global brands educating the masses. And maybe it is a consumer-led rally or mission. Maybe they are the ones that have to do this, because people trust brands. They've grown up with brands all of their entire life, and so it's quite personal for them. If they're told by the government something about this is what we're doing, they either don't trust them or they don't believe them, or there's something negative, right, in that respect. So I think it has to come from that personal trusted space, which to me is obviously consumer brands would be a no-brainer. Friends and family, obviously people talk, but there also needs to be better transparency between private data and public data, which again, blockchain can obviously deal with that in a really good way. So I think there's still a lot of gray areas within the Web3 space, how they can all get put properly, like in a Rubik's Cube, so they're all aligned. That will take time. That will absolutely take time. But the things that are happening in the metaverse with brands, as I mentioned, is a really good starting point. And what's happened recently in the crypto space, again, it's nothing new. If you look at the banking sector, banks go down, banks get bought out, banks get acquired, and then a new bank pops up the next day. That to me I don't think cause any issues for the crypto space personally. The manufacturing, if you go back 100 years, same thing. And I think it's important for the world to have this cleansing cycle and this industrial change, as long as the right reasons are supporting those changes.
You're completely right. I think the challenge is how we get all these ecosystems together. And I think the velocity of innovation, velocity of technology is, of course, disrupting the way governments see this, and as well, they are struggling as well. And I think we cannot just put this outside of the box because, of course, it's much more complex that we cannot just as well blame any place. We just need is to create awareness and create ecosystems that can actually protect us, which is what you're doing. So from your ecosystem, there's a couple of fantastic projects. And I would like to touch a couple of them, and you can highlight the ones you make more sense. But I know that you are around an ecosystem of around 50 plus startups involved, which is quite significant for a platform that is quite young. And as well, one of the things that I see here that is quite important, I mentioned that, is the block space, which is a Web3 knowledge and talent space, which I would like for you to highlight. And the other one is the crypto Nitro, which you are an advisor, which creates a fantastic competitive game and quite cutting edge games and innovation. So if you could highlight this, and feel free to highlight others, I would like really to touch that.
Yep, perfect. Well, I'm not obviously one to plug things, but as you've kindly asked me to, I will happily accept. So the block space is a very dynamic company full of energy, like so much energy and passion in this company, which is really refreshing. And the CEO and founder, Jesus, he is a former Taekwondo champion, world champion, was ranked number 2 in the world previous to the Olympics. And I'm happy to share some information with you after this and his story, but he's moved into the block space and moved on from his professional fighting, Taekwondo sports career. And again, like us, he saw there's a huge gap in the market where there aren't dedicated Web3 organizations, learning platforms. There are obviously things like IDEAX and Coursera that offer, some very, basic rudimentary introductions to Web3, but nothing really scalable, nothing focused. And so what I love about their vision is, they want to be truly global. And, he just got back from India recently, having spent, some considerable time there, working very closely with a lot of the universities there, a lot of the schools, a lot of the local councils there, and, providing courses that are tailored to each of the cities and regions within India, which again, no one is doing. And, if I look at India and I look at Africa, they're the two biggest hotspots globally right now, especially in the Web3 space, because it's so relevant to them as country, to their people, because it provides opportunities that couldn't necessarily be done outside of Web3. And so the block space is a really interesting organization. They will be launching their beta next month. After spending the last 5-6 months on that, they keep adding to their advisory team. They've got a really strong team. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what the beta release looks like. I know they've got a lot of MOUs and pilots that have been put in place. So from a commercial perspective, as a startup, they're doing everything possible as a shining example of what can be achieved within a very short space of time. And I'm talking like 6 months. And I know there's obviously other opportunities with other Indian, business councils that, we can talk about. But again, they're focused on where they can get the most scalable growth. And I think globally that would 100% be in India. One, because of the fact that not everyone can be in a capital city. The remote learning aspect is, a no-brainer. And the course content, they're looking to obviously attract the best of the best. And so one thing I do like about the EDX Coursera is the fact that you can, do courses that have been scaled through the likes of UCL or Harvard or whoever it may be. But again, no one's really focusing on the Web3 space. And so it's going to be really interesting to see them develop. They've got some very ambitious plans, but again, they've got a very strong foundation, very strong work ethic, lots of energy, as I mentioned, very passionate about what they're doing. So I certainly am excited to work with these guys and provide strategic advice around how they can, scale and go to market.
That's amazing. And I think it's really, we will put links to these projects because I completely agree with you. It's about scalability and how we take things to market, but as well, how we look at opportunities as well. So one of the things I want to, one of the things
do you want me to talk about?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you want me to talk about the Crypto Nitro? So Crypto Nitro, again, very passionate, energy, probably, very, I think, coming back to your point about energy, there's a few startups that we advise. Some have more energy and passion than others. Not to say that they won't, ramp that up. But Crypto Nitro, which is a very unique crypto racing game, and you saw one of the designs of the cars earlier, they're pretty spectacular. I certainly haven't seen any design of any, racing cars or vehicles at that level. The team is based in Brazil. They do have some developers outside, but the main core business is based in Brazil. Again, youngish team. No one really over 30 apart from the advisors because we were just old. But again, the quality of their marketing is top notch. And I think this is one thing for startups and entrepreneurs, to take a look at good examples of design, of user experience, branding, awareness, and so forth. And that's what excites me a lot. Each of the companies that we advise or represent, they all have something very unique, whether it's technology, branding, messaging, social following in terms of 400,000 users or followers, or they're solving a problem that is a critical game-changing problem, or they're creating something that's better than an existing product and adds more tangible real value and utility to it. And this is why we don't just necessarily accept any Web3 startup on the platform. It goes through our own internal due diligence because we only want to attract the best. And if we attract the best, then we can hopefully fulfill their funding needs a lot quicker through targeted Web3 investors.
Yeah, that is, I think, a fantastic project, and I think we again put all links for that. And I think people just look at the projects because they speak for themselves, but they're really fantastic. So one of the things, and I know that we are in the last 10 minutes according to your time. So just one thing that of course is key is about IDEAX Labs, where I think is quite innovative, and I'll read what you have in your portal. That is, our core focus is on the technology dimension, but you bring both startups and investors on one single platform with a shared vision of being part of something truly magnificent. And so how does it work, this part? Because I think this is a key element for startups all over the world, how they can actually, I think probably the first thing for any startup is definitely funding, and secondly, cash flow and business. And you guys are trying to put that together, both in terms of support, both in terms of referral network, and both in terms, of course, of how the funding can be between the investors and the startups and the personalities.
Yeah, so it's a pretty straightforward process with IDEAX Labs. As I mentioned, excuse me, this is our beta version. And, we're already road mapping out the technology in terms of where we want it to go. We don't want to obviously follow the same traditional, typical, boring, in my opinion, boring approach that other platforms have like this. For us, it's really about providing a quick process for startups. So a startup comes to the platform, they register, they fill in their initial, credentials. To a degree, like Open Business Council, they need to be verified. We need to know who these people are. We need to know who these investors are. And so, our reputation is at stake. So we do provide some initial, you can call it level 1 or stage 1 due diligence on who they are. We spend, 48 hours, 72 hours looking at the companies, making sure that they say who they are is who they are. And then obviously we'll look at the organization itself in terms of what their product offering is or what their solution is. We are looking to add more, I guess, key metrics, kind of similar to yourself to a degree, around capability, around management capability, around the team, the product, the uniqueness of the product and the startup that they're working with. And so it's not about putting a magnifying glass on the startup. We want them all to succeed, obviously. And where they're not necessarily up to scratch, these are conversations that we can have as a business. And so that's a great position for us to not just be a platform, but to have the resources sitting behind it to educate and help and nurture some of these startups that aren't there just yet, but could be in, say, 6 months. And so, with the platform, as I mentioned earlier, some of the functionality that we have, we also want to, act as a sales and marketing channel for them, because obviously a lot of these startups might be 1 or 2 people or 3 people. Some may or may not have sales and marketing experience. Some of them may not have any social media followers, or if they do, they've just started. And so there's definitely a lot of areas within the business that we can help promote them and provide value through that process. I know some of the things that you're personally doing, which is really exciting, in creating a global standard for a company wiki or a startup wiki link, and providing some metrics around that. A lot of that resonates with what we're doing, because we want to make sure that we can extract and present the best information possible to the investor and vice versa. We don't want to be going down the path of we're just there and it's a set and forget platform. It needs to be nurtured and interactive, and that's why creating this startup ecosystem to support it and providing, some e-learning opportunities and courses through the block space or through Apen Blockchain, Bloom Academy. Again, it's just there to help and shape and refine, what we're doing. And then finally, the advisors I mentioned, they are applicable and accessible to startups on the platform. And these are things I think startups need, especially in their infancy. Raising funds is very hard. Knowing the legal aspects is super hard. So we're trying to provide as much value as possible to help them through that journey, or at least help them through the biggest hurdles that they're currently facing.
Yeah, I think it's amazing, and I love what you guys are doing, and I think we're going to be doing a lot of more things here in this channel and promoting, I think, IDEAX, because I love the idea of having this relationship where you have the same platform, startups, investors, and referrals. But like you said, there's an ecosystem that is digital. I think there's a lot of accelerators worldwide, but very few have this capacity to create this global footprint, first of all, and a lot of them are very elite driven. This is quite down to earth in a good way, and as well very approachable. So to finish, and I know that we have 5 minutes, I want to be conscious of your time. So let's say for people listening to us, okay, and I think this is probably the more important thing, because there's young people, there's people all over the world, our audience is quite broader, but most of them are tech people, tech entrepreneurs, or wannabes, or startups, or students. So let's say if we would have to choose 3 things, and probably from your experience, that you would highlight for people listening to us, and as well in the context of your ecosystem, the context of your success, and as well your achievements, what would be the 3 things you would highlight for people listening to us? Because I think these things help a lot, everyone, even me. I have to read things every day to get excited, and I have to excite my team. So wherever you are, an entrepreneur or a student, or a very successful even investor, because in the end of the day, you have to keep building these relationships as much as all of us. And we are actually in most of all these roles ourselves. So what would be these 3 things that you would highlight? I know that is a lot of things for 5 minutes, but at least if you could synthesize.
Yeah, look, I think, 3 things for me personally. 3 is hard because there's probably 300, right? And I don't necessarily have a favorite. But I think, one of the key things which I've definitely experienced, and, I probably don't necessarily have to think about this too much, but I know when I speak to others, and I speak to other startups and other people that we're working with, I think people just need to be comfortable learning to fail. People need to be comfortable to learn how to take rejections. And try and turn those into positives. Where there is a rejection or a negative, there can be a positive that can be created from that. And what I mean by that is, ask why there was a rejection, ask why the investor didn't invest in you, ask what we were missing in our pitch, or what we were missing in our sales meeting, and learn from that. And you don't necessarily have to pivot. You just need to change your approach, or change your story, or change your mission, or change your value in terms of what you're trying to, put forward. And, part of that comes with being resilient. And I think, it's a big word. I think it's a strong word. And one of my famous quotes, which I live and die by, is from Malcolm X, which is by any means necessary. And when you apply that within your personal life, and within your startup or within your business, it just means you just can't give up. You just can't back down from things. You just need to try and drive and strive forwards and find that energy to get you through to the next, the next phase or the next part of the business. So I think, that's definitely something as a takeaway. I think when it comes to marketing and pitch decks and social media, I kind of wrap them all together in one, because, I see so many pitch decks that are not clean, they're not succinct, they don't have a good value proposition. They look pretty average, they look ugly. And so if your pitch deck is looking like that and it's unprepared, it will generally, show that you as the individual are also unprepared and not being professional and not necessarily being ready for that pitch or being ready for that particular meeting. So, make sure the basics are covered. Make sure your pitch deck look sexy, make sure it's clean, make sure it's got a good global design, so it's not going to sort of look too weird or stand out in a negative way. And finally, for me personally, especially living in Australia, the world we live in right now is very different. With COVID and large macro environments, which could be quite bad, but let's not hope that. Always be available. Always return calls. Always return emails within a set guaranteed time. It doesn't cost you much to smile at anyone. It doesn't cost you much to be nice or provide a positive response to emails. And I think a lot of the time people get so consumed in their own thought process that they don't go back to the basics. And I think going back to the basics, being professional, having a structure, allocating time for phone calls and meetings and pitch decks, it just has an end result in terms of the pitch deck or the website or your social media messaging.
Inspiring words. I hope everyone listening took notes, and I think you can always repeat it. That's the wonderful thing about podcasts. So I know that you have to go, Greg. So I want to thank you for these inspiring moments, and I hope this will be the first of a lot. I don't hope I will make it happen. Like you said, by all means necessary. I'll actually love that. Probably I'll repeat it myself. I wish you a great evening in your case, and for people listening to us, we'll put all the links about the IDEAX Ventures, the IDEAX Labs, and all the different projects, multiple projects of Greg. I think learn with him, engage. We'll put as well the channels where he's involved. I don't know if you want a last word, Greg, and I want to thank you for being here.
Yeah, look, thank you for the opportunity. It's an honor. I know, this is your 200th episode or thereabouts. You've obviously got a very, significant global audience who are very interested in what you have to say and who you want to interview. And I think it's really important to give back to the community in terms of advice, updates, trends, and so forth. So it's a real honor for IDEAX to be here and to talk about some of the things that we're doing, some of the projects that we're doing. And yes, I wish you and your viewers and followers and members a fantastic evening.
Thank you so much, Greg. Okay, all the best for you, and talk soon.
Thank you, Dinis. Take care.